Good morning. Here at Nando Likudo. That our meeting Shinada Itlet or this. Those that Hanan hit Nanslonki on Edash Appetani dash out of this shin Edashanale. Slaus and that Lepat Shaki, a Loma untouchable gap, Salanikan with Noslin and Miniforms. Good morning to everyone. Speaker, Chairman.
Thank you, Honorable Begay. Honorable Daniels.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair. Yeah, and honorable members of Resources and Development Committee. Yeah, my brother, Chairman Nez, he has been in photos on the Haines Ziho. If you today, not just today, but every day, she mentioned. The name is Edo, should actually Herman Daniels Jr. I don't know, and give it to me. I don't lose the son, it is as God thought as another aren't that toy headline that should say what I didn't understand on a day or jet to shot what we can do not for any banishes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Daniels. Honorable Freeland.
Chairman, good morning. Colleagues, thank you for that prayer, Chairman. Shay Mark Freeland is here. Tutoni, Snort Kia Ani Shije, Sandra Kinney, Chair, represent 8 chapters. Crown Point, Najiskis, Tehe, Vicente, White Rock, Lake Valley, Herfino, and Yizza. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Honorable Freeland. Honorable Stewart.
Good morning, Chairman. Nez Aroshaja, Yaja, Vice Chairman for Aroshana, Kayat Aro, Zutahi, Aroshama, Shami, if you're online, Aroshama Trisa, Aro staff and Klinigi, Aroshama Muskan, Aro Hashin has Angi this morning, Hilton Klinigi. Arnold Toyat Shea Wilson, C. Stewart Jr. and Shet Torena Shah, the Alcodon Hijan Hoshna. The Beshmas under Bunch Lingi, 8 quiet cell Togi, the Beck El She, points the only Hijit at Alkea Dinos, but Hadasha Aro under the 45th agency that represent the for the Resource Development Committee. Aro Twitzel, Ainsle, managed Edgecutching Bashchin, catching the shade, the baby between the Shin. Welcome to Oshna, and thank you for the prayers now.
Thank you, Honorable Stewart. Honorable Vice Chair Walker. I believe Honorable Vice Chair Walker is on the call. He's having some technical difficulties. He just texted us. Let me go to Honorable Nate Brown.
Ado Resource and Development Committee, Shanant Ado Craigie Dale Nishigi to our staff, Ado Shikedo Shidnedas and Nastangi, Shaya Quesh, they Trobahan Shlon, look up Bashis Chain, Kiani Dashiche, Ado Tlazana Dashanala, Ado Oisins on the agenda, Hadel Zid Lenny, Ado Shinakwe, so then Zenigi, here, which ain't so deals Ishin, you get the net here, and card the hands and the bay at echo. Not the honey after less, as can't they just all less. $8 Yeah.
Thank you, Honorable Brown. Honorable Vice Chair Walker. Any other colleagues on the call with us this morning? We'll go to RDC staff. Mr. Tahi.
Good morning, Chair, members of RDC, and those online. My name is Rodney Tahi. I'm Kiani and Senja Kine. I'm originally from Steamboat, Arizona, and I am the new Legislative Advisor to Resources and Development Committee. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Shami Begay.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the Resource Development Committee. Shami Begay in Shiedo. I'm the backup advisor this week, and I will be signing off on September 30th. Thank you for the beautiful prayer. Every day we have our leaders pray for us, and that gives us hope. Thank you so much. And Mr. Chair, back to you.
Thank you, Ms. Begay, for joining us. appreciate the work that you do and have done for the great Navajo Nation. Ms. Woody?
Oh, Yant A Chair, Auto RDC members, Nikita Arnott's Yant A, and those people on a call. Good morning. Should Yant in the Dishni Lo here, Chair and John Hudsonadins, and here long. Che ya tapahan shlo the best in a bashinki on a dash chedo and a geneda shanala, but all a sunish could all in each house to see dole. And good morning, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Woody. Ms. Collin?
Good morning, Resources and Development Committee and those of you on the call. Good morning, beautiful morning and beautiful rain in this area. She Mariana Con Dashijine, Toy Lini Nishle, Batani Bashishin, Flash Che Deshiche, Senjikina Dashanala, Akut Awasan Nishle. I am here with you this morning and we'll be taking some notes. Good morning, Mr. Chair, and back to you.
Thank you, Ms. Collin. Ms. Shiako?
Good morning, Chairman Nez, members of the Resources and Development Committee. Melinda Arviso, Siako, Yanshiedo, Tsitnajin, Shlonki, Ani Bashishin, Twitchini, Dashit Shado, Dashchini, Dashanilla, Adonana, legislative staff assistant, and Shlon A, Koda A, Shanan Nishnat Ebe, Tabgao Zande for Speaker Damon. Adonana, Hihat Do, Yat Benin, thank you for having us on the call.
Thank you. Honorable Vice Chair Walker?
Yes, good morning, Chairman, committee members, staff, Speaker's Office of Legislative Council, the various programs and departments that are with us this morning, the presenters, listeners, the listening audience, our relatives, the Navajo people, Thomas Walker Jr. again, and being between the Bashishin, Twitsotni, she said that Sadish gives it a shinad. Bishbans and nothing ding, nothing ding, baby, Chow, we not dashing. The city to for the editor, though Tona Hadley, though Nana Hassan, though Tsakoha did a partners in the other we so. Ebana Shako, Yat, Ado Resource Development Committee to attack Shaho, town that Stagi Edo, Henson, what Nan Shadil, Niki Shahazan, thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Vice Chair Walker. Rick Nez in Shiawasan and Slan. Ozay Kachin, Bashishin, Tanabil, Dashit Shado, Kia Ani, Dashanala. But and then Slido, Hashtanga Chapter, Spanash, Nishige, Hogback, San Juan, Hanza, Upper Fruitland, Burnham, and Newcomb. Welcome, everybody. Do we have anybody from the Office of the President, Vice President on the call? None. Let me go to Kerry Johnson. Press *6. Angel Banal.
Okay, wonderful. Sorry. Thank you for the tip to use the *6. This is Kerry Johnson with the FirstNet program at AT&T, and I'd like to just extend on behalf of AT&T our sincere appreciation to Chairman Nez and the esteemed members of the Resources and Development Committee for inviting us here today. I serve as our rural and tribal affairs specialist and focus on our FirstNet build out in rural and tribal communities across the country. And I've had the opportunity to meet with some of the council bodies over the last several years and appreciate this opportunity to join you again today. I'm also joined by Tony Broberg and Bob Dignio, who are with our external affairs organization and manage our external affairs responsibilities with elected leaders in the Southwest U.S. And I'm also joined by my colleague, Angel Benally, who serves as our tribal affairs specialist for the FirstNet program. So Angel, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Thank you.
Angel Benally and Shia, Tanchkin and Ishle, Tachitni, Bashis Chin, Kia Ani, Dashache, Bedatni, Dashanal. I grew up in Sholo, Arizona, and also my family is from Mariana Lake, New Mexico. I currently reside in Annis, Utah. Thank you so much, Chair and Resources Development Committee members. Thank you so much for your time. As Carrie Johnson alluded to earlier, she is my colleague, and I am the Tribal Affairs Specialist with the FirstNet program at AT&T. And this role is something that I'm very happy to have. And I graduated from Fort Lewis College in Durango, Colorado just last year, and interned with the FirstNet program last year as well, in which in turn I was hired as the Tribal Affairs Specialist.
Thank you, Ms. Benally. Robert Dignio.
Yes, I can. I hope you can hear me, Mr. Chairman. My name is Bob Dignio. I am the External Affairs Director for New Mexico for AT&T, longtime AT&T employee. Grew up in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Thank you so much for the opportunity today. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Tony Broberg.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and RDC members. My name is Tony Broberg. I oversee external affairs for both Arizona and New Mexico. I actually grew up in El Paso, Texas, and now I live here in Phoenix, a lot hotter than El Paso growing up. But I want to say thank you for letting us join you and being able to talk. We appreciate your time and everything that the leadership is doing on the nation. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Kurt Dresch.
And our colleague Kurt, he unfortunately has come down with kind of a nasty cold, and he's hoping it's just a seasonal flu. But this morning he actually went to go get a COVID-19 test. So he extends his apologies for not being here today. He's part of our network organization, but we did do a lot of coordination with Kurt in advance of this meeting. So we'll be prepared to provide his readout on the build status. But my apologies that he wasn't able to be with us today.
Thank you very much. Anybody else on the call that wishes to introduce themselves?
Yeah, hey, Chair, this is Chris Vicente.
Morning, Chris. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. Good morning, Chairman and honorable members of the Resources and Development Committee. My name is Christopher Vicente, Executive Director for the Navajo Nation Telecommunications Commission. Kian Nishle, Toadlini Bashichin, Tatnizana Dashiche, Tatni Dashanella. I hail from Deer Springs, New Mexico. So good morning to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vicente, for getting on the call. Are any of the Telecommunications Regulations Commissioners on the call? None? Okay, we'll move down to the purpose of our meeting is to discuss and provide updated information on the FirstNet program build out within the Navajo Nation and obstacles faced network information and future-looking network bill information. So these are our discussions. Honorable Kealan Begay had introduced a legislation about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, and the concern has been why hasn't this been implemented? It became law, and we would like to address these issues for our first responders. And this has been quite some times now, so hopefully we can move forward with this initiative. So let's go to number 3, presentation discussions. I believe we need to go into executive session for this portion. Who is in charge? Carrie, are you in charge from AT&T?
Yeah, so we do have a PowerPoint presentation that we're ready to show, and I think Mr. Tahi was going to send out then a Zoom link for us to, I guess, migrate over to that Zoom link. So Mr. Tahi, is there guidance on what link we should use? And then we do have a presentation ready to provide our update.
Okay, Ms. Johnson, if you would send that presentation to Mr. Tahi so he can email it to us. We're having some technical difficulties on the Navajo Nation. I don't know if it's due to the weather. Where I'm at is really cloudy and had rained some here last night, and my internet is going in and out here on my computer. So, but if you would send your presentation to Mr. Rodney Tahi, then he can disseminate that to leadership here this morning. And also Mr. Rodney Tahi or either Ms. Yako will be sending out the executive session number. So Ms. Johnson, looking at the agenda, do you have an agenda before you?
Yes, I do.
Okay, if you would glance over it, do we need to go into executive session for what the discussion will be about on A, B, and C under number 3?
Yes. So I would appreciate the ability for us to go into executive session so that we can provide this more forward-looking information.
Okay. It sounds like number 4, after your presentation, the questions and all that will be in closed executive session as well, correct?
Yes, that would be appreciated.
Okay, so we will more than likely go into executive session from now till about perhaps 12 o'clock. I believe this discussion will be an in-depth discussion. So if we need to go back into executive session, currently we can agree, colleagues, when we are in executive session, if we could just stay in executive session till 1 o'clock, or we can start now and go into executive session up to 1 o'clock just to be safe on time. So, Mr. Tahi, what is your advisement, sir?
Chairman, members of RDC, going to 1 o'clock would be a perfect opportunity for us to have this full discussion. I just want to add to this that the reason for this discussion is AT&T has some proprietary network information that is not available to the general public yet. And this is the reason why the executive session is needed. In addition to the full length discussion that we are going to have on this build out on the Navajo Nation. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Tahi. Honorable members of the Resources and Development Committee, the executive session number was sent to us by Ms. Yako. Excuse me, Ms. Yako. Mr. Tahi, if you would send that number also to Ms. Johnson so she can distribute among her colleagues as well. And we will go ahead and log off now and call into this executive session number. Yes,
Mr. Chair, this is Mariana Khan.
Ms. Cohn, go ahead.
I find it getting information about the purpose of the executive session and the interest in safeguarding AT&T's proprietary information is, of course, very, very important to them, and that they will be sharing this with the Resources and Development Committee in executive session. Although I don't know if the rest of the presentation warrants going into executive session. I do believe that the Resources and Development Committee knows that that this information, whatever is discussed, is on behalf of the Navajo people, with the Resources and Development Committee as the body that is getting information with regard to today's topic. And I don't believe that it all should be in executive session. This is a public forum, and Navajo Nation through the Resources and Development Committee is gathering information on this topic. I don't see how all of it is in need of executive session unless there is other information that is going to be shared that needs to be in executive session. Other than their proprietary information that they want to share with the Resources and Development Committee, I don't see that the rest needs to be in executive session. And if I do not have a full grasp of today's topic, then perhaps there's more information that I need to be given to advise on the situation of going into executive session. Mr. Chair, I hate to belabor the point, but that's my concern. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Ms. Khan, for your concerns and bringing that to our attention. Ms. Johnson, Carrie, the presentation that you will be bringing forth to RDC, what part of the agenda is very confidential and sensitive information that you wish not to divulge to the public? And go ahead.
Yeah, so I think, as far as for points 3 and 4, it would be completely appropriate and fine for us to provide A and B in a more public setting. It's just once we start getting into kind of forward-looking numbers on the build out that is really where we'd prefer to be in executive session. And then if there are questions specific to the build, those we'd like to have in the executive session, since again they're forward looking. But we could do the background on FirstNet, the public-private partnership, the discussion about the deployables. That would be appropriate to be in a public setting, but just once we start talking specifics about the build and our future plans for build out over the next year, that we would appreciate being in executive session.
Okay, so on the agenda under number 3, presentation and discussions, A and B can be disclosed to the public, and then we will go into executive session under C, correct?
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, we will do that. Honorable members of RDC, disregard the executive session for now. What we will do is go ahead and give the floor to AT&T, Ms. Johnson, as well as her staff, to bring forth items A and B under number 3, and C would pretty much be confidential and sensitive information that they would like an executive session And at that time, we will decide how much time we will need to go into executive session for the build out. So at this time, we will go ahead and just wait and allow Ms. Johnson to do the presentations. Ms. Johnson? Ms. Johnson, before I go to you, let me ask my colleagues here, honorable members of RDC, do you have any comments or questions before we begin?
Chairman Kellen.
Honorable Begay, go ahead.
Chairman, here had Kudo, other RDC member, and then also good morning everyone on the line. This is Delegate Kellen. I think it's be much more appropriate just to do any general public information, and then we can just go into any executive session at a later time. I believe we just need to inform and be informed and get update exactly what is it the actual delay is and what is it that we really need to do to get this program on its feet on the Navajo Nation. I think that's the key theme that we're trying to push. But I understand the area where each carriers, I guess they defend their programs or their plans and so on from the competitors out there. But I believe for FirstNet, this is solely a contract that was awarded to the AT&T by the United States government. So I don't believe I don't think there's any competition to be, I guess, to be talked about in executive session. Did I FirstNet a contract earlier, and the biggest one that we're really looking for, the main one that we're really looking for, is that what plan has been in place and how is it that it's really needs to be implemented on the Navajo Nation. And I believe the Navajo Nation Council had already dished out a policy, a resolution asking for an assessment. And I don't know, Ms. Johnson and your other colleague from AT&T has that particular document. And then also there's another Navajo Nation Council resolution affecting with this COVID-19 situation. There was another council resolution that was passed by the council expressing for an expedient implementation of FirstNet across the Navajo Nation. And again, we're still at a standstill, and it's been over a year now. So I'm not really sure. Again, that's the only thing that we're really trying to pinpoint to say that, okay, where's the problem? What is the problem? That's the key thing, and I think that's where the public really needs to know, the Navajo people. Not what AT&T new design of whatever is being kept secret. I mean, that's under your office. Yes, we understand that. But in working and getting the service on the Navajo Nation is what we really want to hear. So, Chairman,
Ms. Johnson, as you heard Honorable Kealan Begay, that we would like to just receive the general information, which is all we need as leadership. If there's anything that we don't need to hear about, or perhaps on another date, we'll be okay with it. But whatever we could just talk on, because the public would like to hear about this. This has been a law that was passed for over a year and a half now, and I'm sure they're waiting on the progress and the status of where it's at. So with that, Ms. Johnson, you have the floor.
Okay, wonderful. So Mr. Tahi, I just joined the Zoom link that you had shared with me. Is that just for executive session or is that for this meeting?
Ms. Johnson, that Zoom link that was created was for the executive session.
Okay.
And I did just now receive the PowerPoint presentation, which I'll be sharing with members of RDC now.
Okay. And I think I have the earlier Zoom link, so let me try to join. I'll drop from this window. Sorry about that. I'm trying to get to the other Zoom.
Ms. Johnson, this is Rodney. This Zoom link that you're currently on is the one that we're currently using. The second Zoom link that I sent to you is for the executive session, but
okay.
Per Delegate Kealan Begay's request, they want again an update on where things are at with the project. So if we can move forward with that request, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes. So I do think I have the other Zoom link, so I'm just toggling to that one now.
Mr. Tahi, did you receive the PowerPoint presentation? Did you send it out to us?
The chair members of RDC, I did send it out, but my internet is telling me that it's being unstable. So just give it a few more minutes.
And I do have, so I'm now in the general meeting, and I'm about to share the presentation that just removes the maps. So is the
Mr. Tahi, we'll just go ahead and move along. Hopefully we'll get the email from you on the presentation. So Ms. Johnson, if you would, you may go ahead and proceed with your presentation at this time.
Okay, wonderful. And for folks who are on the public meeting Zoom, are you able to see my screen?
Yes, we are able to see.
Ms. Johnson, you just go ahead and move forward, please. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So in providing we thought it would be helpful for those who may have a little less familiarity with FirstNet, just to try to kind of lay the groundwork on what the National Public Safety Broadband Network is. And the impetus behind the dedicated nationwide network for first responders really stemmed from the major communication failures that occurred during the response to the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Back in 2001, you had a mutual aid situation where you had numerous agencies across different jurisdictions coming to respond to the event, and they were using radio systems that couldn't necessarily talk to each other. And then the other challenge was that the commercial wireless networks became completely overwhelmed with just that surge in voice and data traffic. And so they similarly could not be relied upon to reliably get communication through. And as a result of that major communication failure, there was the inability to tell first responders that they needed to evacuate when it was known that the towers were going to collapse. And so that was one of the just major issues that the 9/11 Commission report, when it was published in 2004, identified the need for us as a country to create a dedicated first responder communications network that would ensure priority, preemption, and that ability for first responders to communicate during times of emergency. But one thing that also was recognized that, this wasn't limited to 9/11, that emergency communications challenges have long been a real issue for geographies, whether it's tribal communities, rural communities, suburban, urban. And so first responders worked together to really mobilize support from Congress to take action. And so in 2012, based on that recommendation, the 9/11 Commission report, there was legislation passed that set aside 20 megahertz of nationwide spectrum for first responders. And then it also created the Federal FirstNet Authority within the U.S. Department of Commerce. And through spectrum auction revenues, it actually set aside kind of an upstart of about $6.5 billion that would support the build out of this nationwide network. So the FirstNet Authority then worked with stakeholders, public safety stakeholders, to create an RFP, a request for proposal. And ultimately, AT&T was the only nationwide wireless carrier to respond to that. There were a number of other proposals that were also submitted, but AT&T in 2017 was selected as that private partner in this 25-year public-private partnership. And so we, as part of that commitment to the FirstNet Authority, we face rural coverage milestones at really every phase of this initial build out. And that's what gets us into what we're doing with Navajo Nation and to extend that band 14. So I wanted to just kind of share that background about what this partnership is and the type of commitments that we have. And so we are currently working on an initial 5-year build out, and the deadline for when we need to have that initial build completed is March of 2023. And I can jump to so when we look at how we're approaching the build out, there's kind of a variety of ways that we're really tackling the band 14 build. The first is by adding band 14, so the public safety first responder network spectrum, to tens of thousands of existing AT&T sites across the country. The other category is that we have new sites that AT&T is deploying. And then the third area is collaboration with rural and local wireless network providers. And so in areas, especially in more rural, remote, also tribal areas, this has been one of the ways that we are extending the reach of the First Responder Network Authority's Band 14 spectrum, and we're adding and extending the reach of AT&T's own commercially licensed spectrum. And this is really how we're approaching the build out for the Navajo Nation. This isn't just unique to Navajo. I would say, one other company that we've talked about and we publicly talked about is a company called Viera Wireless, and they have hundreds of sites in Nebraska, South Dakota, Colorado. We have a similar rural wireless provider that we're working with in Wyoming. So that just gives a couple examples of how we're working with these rural providers. In the case of Navajo Nation, we saw the benefit of working with some of the local regional providers as a way to really expedite the build out, as well as avoid the need to create, duplicative tower infrastructure. And so we as AT&T, and again, we're the ones with the obligation to the federal government to meet the band 14 spectrum build out requirements. But in certain locations in the country, we actually have worked with those local providers. And so how we're approaching the Navajo Nation build is that we are working with Smith Bagley, doing business as Cellular One, as well as ComNet. And so essentially, we have the obligation to the federal government, but we have entered into our own contract with ComNet as well as Smith Bagley And we've identified specific sites across their network serving the Navajo Nation, where we're essentially working with them almost as a site acquisition vendor, what we would call like a site act vendor, where they are on behalf of AT&T working to get the permitting, the approval, so that they can essentially add our equipment, both the band 14 as well as our AT&T commercial spectrum, to those existing sites. There are some instances where maybe their existing location, the tower just structurally can't handle the additional weight from this new equipment, so they are having to deploy a new tower site to be able to handle the weight of the equipment safely. But by and large, it's really a co-location on these existing sites. So that's really how we are approaching the build. But the buck really stops with us. We're the ones. AT&T is the one with the obligation to the federal government to meet our coverage build-out requirements. But for the Navajo build, Smith Bagley as well as ComNet are a critical part of the success of this build-out, to be able to extend the reach of the FirstNet coverage to first responders serving the Navajo Nation. The other secondary benefit I'd like to highlight is that when we're doing this, we're also adding the AT&T commercial LTE spectrum, and that's helpful for the first responders because they have even more spectrum capacity that they can leverage, that they have the priority and preemption. So if there's a major emergency, or even let's say at a pop-up COVID-19 vaccination site, even a planned type event where you have lots of people going to one location and first responders need to have that reliable, secure connectivity to the network, they have prioritized access to the network. So they have connectivity when and where they need it. But the secondary benefit is that we are extending the reach of commercial LTE service on AT&T for the broader public. So those who may want to sign up for AT&T commercial wireless service. That's kind of the secondary benefit of this build out. So as far as one other area of benefit that FirstNet brings, so in addition to the build out of fixed infrastructure, we also have, there's a dedicated fleet of what we call SAT-Colts, cells on light trucks. And these are essentially portable cell towers that could be requested free of charge by public safety on FirstNet. And this could be in a emergency situation or a planned event. And so while we are building out that fixed infrastructure that will have that more permanent coverage, in the event that an emergency is happening in a more remote area or a place that doesn't yet have the FirstNet connectivity, first responders on FirstNet can make this request for these deployables. And we've had a number of very successful deployments serving Navajo Nation. The ones on the right-hand side of the screen in San Benito and Window Rock supported the COVID-19 response, and Chris Mr. Becenti would be able to elaborate further on those deployments. But that was something last spring when in 2020, when both FEMA as well as Navajo Nation first responders were responding to the initial really surge in COVID-19 cases. There was an identified need for connectivity in these two locations. And so that was something that we had two deployments to support the COVID-19 response. Other examples of deployments that we've done on the planned event side of the house would be the Navajo Nation Fair a couple years ago, as well as when the First Lady visited. There was a recognized need that for the Navajo Nation first responders, for them to really augment their FirstNet connectivity. We also deployed one of these FirstNet SAT-Colts, and this came at the request of Navajo Nation as a FirstNet user. And so this is just one other example of a benefit that comes to FirstNet users and that helps us address the coverage needs in a more remote location that may not have connectivity today or in a very remote location. So wanted to highlight these examples. And then just as an aside, we as AT&T just greatly appreciate our relationship with Navajo Nation. We're really excited by the progress that's occurred with the build out so far. We still certainly have work to do, but really pleased with the progress and just grateful of the partnership and the level of priority that the committee and Navajo Nation leadership has given to FirstNet. And I just wanted to highlight some of our corporate responsibility initiatives just based on, our appreciation and our relationship with Navajo Nation. But some examples include, this was last spring of 2020, but a donation to the Navajo Nation COVID-19 Relief Fund. Angel Benally, who introduced herself earlier, also helped us spearhead a large nationwide campaign of donating pandemic-related supplies, things like sanitizers, masks, other type of disinfectants, and through collaboration with American Indian College Fund, we actually did make a donation worth about $99,000 to the Navajo Technical University for those pandemic supplies. And then other recent activities were a significant donation to Team Rubicon in their medical response for COVID-19, and then an additional $50,000 that specifically supported some of the vaccination efforts for Navajo Nation. So just wanted to highlight these recent examples of some of our more philanthropic activities that have served Navajo Nation. And then this brings us into the period of our presentation where we'll be talking more specifically about the build out, where we are, and future deployment. So I'd be happy to answer questions related to the content that we covered thus far, but further discussion, we do request the ability to go into executive session.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. So did you go through all the PowerPoint that is before us?
Yes, so I did go through the PowerPoint and the executive session. Well, I guess now, since we are just covering the public version, should we just stay? I guess based on the guidance, should we just stay in public session and we'll just have to keep it pretty high level, or what is the preference? Because I guess we had planned to provide more specifics about network build status. But what is the guidance for kind of the next steps discussion?
Thank you, Ms. Johnson, for that. The purpose of our meeting is to receive updated information on FirstNet program build out within the Navajo Nation and what obstacles AT&T or Cellular One is facing on the Navajo Nation, and what we can do as leadership to move this forward. And this is where we're at. This is the concern, is it appears that this has stalled, and we need to move it forward for our first responders, public safety, and medical personnel. So we just need an update on this. And if there's some very sensitive confidential information, we will go into executive session like on C. But if you would just provide us more information on what AT&T is struggling with or facing as far as obstacles, that's what we're here to assist with. Ms. Johnson.
Absolutely. Okay, so just at a kind of, again, at the high level, so we are at about the midway point in our nationwide build out. And again, that's tracking to March of 2023 is the date that we all are laser focused on. And that's really the contractually when our obligation is to the First and Authority to have this initial build completed. And so, but one of the things, as you could definitely understand, is we're wanting to get all of this completed well in advance of that March of 2023 deadline. And so what we have forecasted and what we are really working hard to accomplish with our partners is for the lion's share to really be completed by end of year. And this is specifically for the Navajo Nation build. But we're really tracking, and our goal is to have the lion's share done by end of year this year. And then, remaining sites to be done in 2022. So that is our goal. I will say that when looking at the number cumulatively of our tower sites on Navajo Nation, we are at about 48%. So just shy of 50% for having those launched and on air and broadcasting both the band 14 as well as the AT&T commercial LTE spectrum. So that is where we are today. And as far as some of our requests for things that would be very helpful. So I worked with our two partners, Smith Bagley as well as ComNet, to get their guidance on, what are some of the things that they need to keep this moving and on track, because we recognize the criticality of getting this launched, and we so appreciate the RDC and Navajo Nation leadership for making this a priority and really directing this across departments to have folks collaborating with us to keep this moving forward. But I'd like to just start off with some of the areas that Smith Bagley did highlight for their project. So the first is really looking at that memorandum of understanding, and they've identified a number of sites that, in addition, so they currently have a presence on certain locations around the Navajo Nation, but these are the sites that are going to require, in order to add our equipment, it's going to require them really upgrading and essentially building a new tower site, just because the existing structure cannot withstand the weight of our equipment. And so there are roughly 9 of these sites that will require that enhancement. And so what we are hopeful is that by using that memorandum of understanding, that can allow these sites to proceed. And my understanding is that 6 of the 9 of those sites have been submitted to the land department roughly, I think, about 3 to 4 weeks ago. And then this week they are planning to submit the remaining, and that would be really great if we could see those approved, because again, they are going to require a bit more activity, just because it will be tower construction to really reinforce where they already had been located, but where they need to be making some pretty significant structural upgrades and essentially a new tower site. So that would be one, is allowing that MOA to really guide and hopefully provide kind of swift approval so that they can get moving on that. The other area is that we have a number of their sites that will, and I'm talking about kind of dozens and dozens of sites in a public setting. I can't provide the specific number, but we have dozens and dozens of sites that essentially will require a sublease between AT&T, the Land Department or Navajo Nation, and then SBI. And they are planning, actually SBI is planning today, or at least this week, to have kind of a full tranche of those leases, or I guess the subleases submitted. And we would greatly appreciate, again, fast review, expedient review, so that those can be executed and the builds can proceed. And so that would be kind of the two sort of key areas that are probably our top priority to support the further build out of FirstNet for the Navajo Nation. And then ComNet had shared with me kind of a handful of very kind of specific issues with a handful of their sites that they had wanted addressed or at least highlighted. And so, but those are a little smaller, but probably our main big priorities would be those 9 sites that require, a new tower, and allowing the MOA to really guide that. And then providing expedient review and execution of the subleases. So those are our kind of 2 primary requests. But I just can't, thank this body enough, as well as Mr. Vicente, and really, there are many folks who have had to play a key role in this, whether it's the TIPO office, the Land Department, NTUA, DOJ, the legal department, who have been really instrumental in getting us, again, we're about 50% complete. And now as we work to finish out the second half. So we just thank the collaboration with Navajo Nation and would welcome any additional questions. One thing I thought might be helpful is if maybe after this meeting, if we did have kind of a sit down, maybe between Mr. Vicente, the Land Department, AT&T, and then Smith Bagley, to talk more about the MOA, as well as the subleasing, and kind of see if we can have a roadmap of when we can accomplish the kind of these, most immediate hurdles that we're trying to overcome. And then if we could convene, after that, when we have kind of that better visual of timeline and next steps, that we could do a readout to the committee. But that is kind of my macro level, high level update, and kind of where, really our key priorities to just keep this on track. But we're thrilled at the progress that's been made so far, and just want to commend many of the various departments at Navajo Nation that made that possible. And then also just this Mr. Kiam Begay and other esteemed members, Chairman Nez, for your long-term interest in FirstNet and just providing that leadership. So that concludes my prepared remarks in this public setting, but would welcome questions.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Honorable members of RDC, we will now open the floor for comments and questions. Honorable Begay, you have the floor.
Chairman, and then the presenter, Ms. Johnson, and everyone on the line, my apology, but let me go ahead and do a few statements in the Navajo language. Chairman, yat ehnana di kodo di bini bi banit indiki kwa ba nasi tni di koje tlahot ego ko di ka nindiki di ka devices tadadit telephone tadadit cell phone akokot asati the bake it or think good asati dedicated this Papa and it do pa old zengoko. Ajo hit ashin di basic chi do other patient sa case a bit ninigi hit ashin. Could you be bad has go do banahon ago to a first net or Diego go did how the door need and the Navajo Nation a cocojin his law. Other ambulance that a ishin le contains cessata. Archie has net. Do nahan ago a coco arch be ocoton niliki 80 con a lab base penny or that no that contas are towers. A coco 80 AT&T or Diego got ordinary arch company why in Chicago has do only the Nasan Hikayapati in the United States to Arjanish about that on the Washington then in about that Ango Conlan Nakat Arj Dig at base of Benyan Neliki Arj the state but the Nedi Slatin or Hatahui Soko Arj isn't that nish. A coco up 18T. Navajo Nation Bakago Ape Sato di Towers Disniki Dos Bohna the Bata Elon Benat Aitan the Beta Holoniki Besishin that the Nishnikis Noyen Hitch had Z Aden John Navajo Nation Bakage Kay has Aniki Quajer Cellular 1 Beti Nido NTUA Ado leha ado achahit ashi aja cell towers dan linki beta hollo jot aita kontas ha asha beta khada de dit asko go di first net linki 8 benti aja dik at the towers ki implemented or nil ada the DD at first net or Yeniki Yenaz Nishko Okoton Nis a base had that the yeet after little base had that dead or listed I dance at Nikon MOU a could just sell you once I dance had that and the DC that I don't Bikahaneta Chopping in Niki a coach and Hinkinava Hope Washington has Ange Land Department or Yehaki to a coach. Did ego go quacky at in the lago got ape honet zango go did out at the lister no go other is the ape has on it at John de na kigo ke has on go eco don na be ho base bounce on because adon na kigo na sos hat days nel sa iki to in le CMA 1220 Dik a Kojib, the Kosan Nanjo Gishipit Benina Go Dik at the Quick Shake Kata go Atal Bata Whiz Eco Atal Naki, Hoto Nico, King Atato Nistro Nico, Arch in our source A Nachiton Wahanta. What our base pass and the end the giant egg go to it to Yego go baby ho Eden had not attended out on his has other Nabikiyat committee NAPI AU 2521 a base pass under Nabikiyat committee but did no a K Nana Zag go a coach 18T the first net or there other coaching Nabikoba Kayaka has argued that in the Shikiki has jo na be kobe kaya has argued at Eddie has jo had to stop how to see go Washington Linki na be hope Washington na tos which a hundo least deal and did a dik at first net or yaki kunk at na listano single go did did up and on Shikit Nikitnigo go ejo in our tos and then get at in the baba need to add a coco a what ain't Koto hate all the 80 a joy see keep in ya hatniki 80 coaching his allowed to dini bhat this haki khaki da le di khong kat le just khakon at the door just be that jo that the etik at self service don da nista epe ba da hu to epe pa and dal nisho to nicho si bin ya eat and kwaki a coben nango go beche test inkit I dan kon cell tower be da holoniki things go to shin de to zo tal ya pe po net za a koko o ani ni le pesot o yu tes indo pesot o yu do don da ye led ni te jon te e khoje asati be par pa na hot e aja to hoel te khaz aja at be pa ta has khadet alatit on hina che peso il no e ben na go gos obet asen seats a ko ben na go e khojin hit nen linigit o khayu bechen da hui na to sat da le khit a ta ti be ba hon te go ye stando tasto kodo late na hot en ki ta tshin be sa koton ni jo e si ki ben ye ba kha it isn't a to sk e no len ki a de da is no sa ki a ko ben in na ko kodo. I'd like to ask two direct questions to Carrie, Ms. Johnson. I appreciate you providing an update, the basic information of how the AT and FirstNet had developed. We understand the reason, the purpose of it. You know that the Navajo Nation spans out into three different states, and we have no choice but to deal with these three different governments. And also how we need to implement the FirstNet at all 110 chapters. And I know the basic area that the more concern by AT&T is that to employ this quickly is that you have reach out to those existing towers that are on the Navajo Nation to implement this particular program. And I think that's the reason why you've mentioned the MOU they have made with one of the carrier on the Navajo Nation. Now, I mean, I believe that this particular MOU had or wasn't been implemented almost a year ago. But as of today, maybe could you provide the Navajo Nation or the Navajo people that this agreement was approved by the president of the Navajo Nation, but yet we haven't really implemented anything. And from your standpoint, would you provide what is the reason? Maybe that could shed some light on to us as an RDC to say that why isn't this MOU been implemented? That's the first question. Now, the second question is in how much the NABI AU 25-21. That's just an update. NABI resolution, but this particular resolution was also passed back in the 23rd Council. It asked for the same thing to provide an assessment and report to the Navajo Nation Council. So I believe that there was sufficient time to provide a concise information to the Navajo Nation Council over to the RDC that this is the overall plan that you see and how you believe that the FirstNet could be implemented on the Navajo Nation. So if you could be able to provide those two a response, a question, Ms. Johnson, and then anyone who else that are on the line. Chairman, just like the MOU had no Kotobe Aita Base had that on the go at Nakidon, which it attended all what air to be that the Nishta, Ila Yego, Ila Isiki, Bahon, Hashet, Ado, Neta, Ado, Navigated Committee 25-21, Baby Tochiki, A Arje. And go adan not sorting hit a hosse, cut her sauce, sticky dick at art, and it sad as nothing up on as na a sand that has uncle adan did a how the don nisto did a quacky baby nashquay did donant ago conk at has aunt or lessy kiki be okay now. So the that's been hot or the chairman. So I like to maybe have Mr. Vicente, because it does indicate the even the first responder, like Mr. Delmar, the is out and Jondo listens, because the AEC kodo dik hodon ligi AJB that nisto listo hit ale sato kodo be kana atlan so ya aj ko edit on desk do chairman.
Thank you very much, Honorable Begay. And also, Mr. Vicente, please stand by. I'm going to give you some time to speak to this concern as well. So, Ms. Johnson, you have the floor to respond.
Wonderful, thank you. And I would say, again, the leadership from this body and from the council has been very, very critical into getting us to where we are today. And I can share that we have more than 60 sites that have launched today. They are on air, again, broadcasting both the FirstNet Band 14 spectrum as well as the AT&T commercial LTE spectrum. So we have made some very good gains. And I think in large part, things like that MOU or MOA that have supported our partners, ComNet and Smith Bagley, have been very helpful in getting that achieved. The one thing I would say is now, I think that MOA will continue to be really vital as we work on those, again, 9 sites that I mentioned that Smith Bagley needs to do some new towers just because of the structural issues with the existing sites. And so, we thank Navajo Nation leadership and this body for your work that has provided that very clear direction to the various departments across Navajo Nation government that this is a priority. And we are about 50% along in this initial build out. And we are hoping through the end of this year and then into next year, having the project completed. That's our forecast and what we are working with our partners to try and accomplish. So that would just be my update regarding the MOA, that I think it has been very helpful, and we've seen the benefits of it with our progress where we are today. Then the let's see, other piece. So we do have, I know that we were planning to have kind of a similar meeting like this back in March of 2020. And we had made arrangements to actually go in person and be able to provide this type of update and status update and discussion of recommendations. And I know that had to be understandably postponed due to COVID. I'm really greatly appreciative that we're convening again today to be able to provide that assessment. Since our discussion several weeks ago, I have been working with our partners to put together kind of their guidance of next steps, where they are, what needs to happen as we enter the final stretch to get this built. And Mr. Keon Allen Begay, you mentioned the assessment. So we do have a draft of that ready, and I would assume we could have that prepared even as soon as this week to get submitted to provide kind of this high level of where we are today, what are some of the remaining issues that we need to have addressed. And again, it's the handful of topics that ComNet prepared. And then I can summarize what SBI shared about, again, the MOA for those 9 sites, and then completing those subleases. And that's something we could even target to have to this committee this week. that we have a draft of that, and we're just, assembling the final details from our partners. So that's something we'd be happy to share with you. So I hope that helps to answer those questions. But again, we're happy with at least the progress that's been made to date. And then, as we enter the home stretch, we just appreciate your continued support and interest in FirstNet, and just really reinforcing to the various Navajo Nation departments how important this is, and that since it is time sensitive, just the criticality of getting these applications approved for both ComNet and Smith-Bagley. I'd also like to note that, this isn't a one and done. We're not going to just, after the initial 5-year build, this isn't a period or stop or end to what we're doing. This was just the initial plan for the initial 5 years. And the FirstNet Authority, one exciting part of FirstNet is that, they will continue to hear from critical stakeholders like Navajo Nation about where there may still be additional coverage needs and what can inform the future evolution and build out of FirstNet. So, I would recommend that the Navajo Nation continue to work closely with the FirstNet Authority. I think you're in a great position just because, you have that role and that seat at the tribal working group that the FirstNet Authority convenes every month. But, that would be a really good place to, if there are, even once we're done with the 5-year build, if there's additional coverage needs or where you need service, to be able to share that with the FirstNet Authority so that can inform future build out. That is an opportunity. Right now, we as the private partner, we're focused on that March of 2023 deadline and getting these the initial 5-year build done as soon as possible. And the end of this year into next year will be really the critical time when a lot of this work will happen. But as far as interest in the future and what comes next and answering that question, that really rests with the federal FirstNet Authority. So thank you so much, and I'll leave the floor to Mr. Vicente, or if there's other questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Johnson. You did state that you do have the draft of the assessment. Would you like to report that to RDC leadership today? Do you have time for that?
Yeah, so if even this week, because I know Angel Benally was helping me with that, and then we were focused on getting things ready for this meeting, and we did receive kind of some final guidance and recommendations from our partners. So I will need to get that approved through our legal before I share that, but we as a team can target even, end of week. I feel very confident that we could get something by the end of this week. I don't know if I can turn it around by today, but since we have a draft already ready to go, we just need to kind of make some small updates based on some new information that we received from our partners. But would it be possible to get that shared to the committee? And we asked that be treated confidentially, but would it be possible for us to target end of week this week?
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Perhaps we can have a report to RDC when, hopefully within a month or so, put you on the agenda and provide that report to us. And you also stated 9 sites, Ms. Johnson. I'm just trying to think about the 9 sites, and you mentioned Bagley. Who is this person, and how are they associated with AT&T?
Oh, sorry, and I was saying Smith-Bagley.
Miss?
Smith. So Smith-Bagley, like Cellular One, is the one with
Cellular One.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And sorry, I think they go by, Smith Bagley, but then they're like, I think they're like DBA, like doing business as is Cellular One. So sorry. So I think our legal contractual relationship is technically with like SBI, and so we call them Smith Bagley. But then they commercially provide service as Cellular One.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Honorable Kiel and Begay, do you have a follow-up question?
Chairman, I don't know who we need to, pull in. As you heard, that AT&T has been, standing at the door of the Navajo Nation, ready to help. But internally, I guess that's one thing that we need to let the public know. What is the problem of not getting this going? I mean, MOU, I don't know what as long at the end it all first net, deployment emergency legislation. Navajo Nation Council, though the president signed a law, but nothing's been happening. I don't know, Chairman, though RDC again, is it possible that we resolve this day to say that, okay, what is the problem internally? Smith, SMITH, Smith Bagley, AT&T, RGA, that do could ashin, could they sell you one company? To RGC, Bahatso slit that's all yet or ba it's Zago, could ashin that deal nish. Joe could ashin AT&T, RGS had that test, did up and that deal, Nishin that deal need. And I believe that 9 site is not the only site. As I indicated, we have 110 chapters, but this is the initial start. If not just Cellular One, what about we have NTUA, we have other ComNet and whoever that does service on the Navajo Nation that does have power. I mean, why can't we just allow to implement these on the existing towers that we have? I would think, Ms. Johnson, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's just a matter of not to go disturbing any more land, but it's just more of a posting or what do you call it? Putting another equipment on the existing tower.
Co-location?
No, not co-location. Just the equipment. The gishin MOU that and the kito and I believe that maybe that's where Mr. Helona Land Department could address that, to say that this is maybe being considered as a co-location, and this is being considered as an AT&T process. They had to go through all this process. That's MOU that and they ought to quite Latin his long liniki ye dal store lispin ye itu bakait in the bahat and quite again, maybe that's where Mr. Vicente or Mr. Helona could provide a general clarification to the general public of why is it that the Navajo Nation hasn't even initiated this, while I believe that some other communities or cities across the United States are already utilizing this. Look at the Amber Alert that the no the Ado Kodon not has that Nashichi had not that in Kahta there's no signal no Ado Kon Diego Kodo hit Ashit and then Liniki which eta hon. Those unexpected tiki God forbid that the things don't happen, but accident happens. ako e papa che de need e do le strupeni ya ko akie ako o ko halate I mean maybe that's one thing I need to stand on today, Chairman, that what is the problem within the Navajo Nation that this isn't being implemented. I mean, I like for us to get an answer, and then how do we help as RDC to say that let's do this and help each other. This is what RDC needs to do. This is what Land Department needs to do. This is what cell carrier needs to do. This is what AT&T needs to do. This is what the chapter needs to do. This is what the Navajo Nation people needs to do. And this is whoever needs to do what. That will get this done. This is the law. I mean, there's laws in existence, but there's another law that trumps another law, and which I believe the CMA 1220. I mean, maybe we get an interpretation from Department of Justice. I mean, I'd like for them to be on the line as well with our legislative council. I mean, how serious is it that the Navajo Nation government or the Navajo program needs to, address or implement the policy that we put in place by vote? So, Chairman, I don't want to go into a different direction of the communication or expose our internal issue to the world, but I think there's one way that we need to only understand and see what is the problem and how do we address it as an oversight committee. If it needs to go before the council next week or next month, we have the fall session coming up. Maybe we develop a legislation to resolve the situation or the issue that we're dealing with. And that's one thing that AT&T or Ms. Johnson probably knows, is that tribes are getting funding for broadband deployment on the Navajo Nation. And I'm sure you know that we're also talking with the Arizona Commerce Authority of implementing a smart highway through the Navajo Nation, and there's several programs or several entities are expanding broadband across the Navajo Nation. See, that's the big concerns I have. Why does the Navajo Nation allow company to expand or run a line through the Navajo Nation just so that other cities will be benefiting, but yet our own Navajo people won't be able to get benefits from it? They're okay to do it, to run the line across the Navajo Nation, but why is it that we're having such a big problem implementing such for our Navajo people? On the west side, from Phoenix to Denver and Salt Lake, but he can't no right of way, which Navajo people City of Phoenix, the City of Salt Lake, and the City of Denver, but on Navajo Nation, but Kai did Ahajoha, the Don Nito, what a body, Lifty Nigo A, which is now Yid Nato, the Bait Nata, a Quayego Shitty, Ashan Chairman. And I'm sure you're sensing my tone of how serious I am about this particular situation. So Benago Kododa, Mr. Vicente, Mr. Helona, maybe provide to the public what is the problem and why isn't that we're not getting things done on the Navajo Nation. Chairman.
Oh yeah, Honorable Gay.
I appreciate that, Chairman. I apologize, but yes, the floor is back to you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Vicente, could you elaborate on some of these MOUs and where we're at with all this?
Sure. Thank you so much, Chairman, and thank you so much again, honorable members of the Resources and Development Committee. So a little bit of background. Back in January of 2020, if my memory serves me correctly, Delegate Keelan Begay, we all met together with Brian Gilbert back at the I think it was Roca building down in Phoenix to discuss this particular matter. One of the things that did pop up was that the current regulations under NNTRC doesn't support or doesn't have language in there to support co-locating, or if the new language that's going to be in part of the new regulations is the non-traditional co-location, such as hanging equipment off the side of buildings, water tanks, etc. I do accept full responsibility for this portion. One of the things we've been working on logistically is trying to plan out when we can meet. One of the things I would like to proceed with, and of course this is an invitation and it's going to be based logistically if we can land this together, is if we can identify a date. One of the preliminary dates we were trying to aim for was the beginning of next month, but however, with one of the challenges with the Navajo Nation is also working on CARES as well as ARPA. So again, there's been some challenges, at least within our office. But as far as the regulations, one of the proposed dates we're wanting to do is on the let me make sure I'm getting my dates right before I state them. October 25th, basically the week after council. That's one of the proposed dates we're trying to meet. And what we want to do is invite RDC to the public hearing as well as the workshop between the service providers. What we want to do there is just make sure that leadership within legislative understand what we're trying to achieve with the regulations by trying to get these gray areas identified. That way they can utilize these structures. So if memory serves me correctly, I believe I don't remember the exact number, but under the MOA, there was specific sites that were mentioned on there that's not currently part of the regs or some shape or form. And what this was is to encourage the service providers to still continue their build out, provide all the necessary paperwork and package to land department, and land department as well as Vertical Bridge can work that out as for an interim solution. And once we get to the regulations, we work all that out in the regulations, and that way it can go forward. So one of the things, one of the things I know that we've also been working on is getting feedback. So we've had a couple notice of proposed rulemakings that did go out. We did collect comments from the public, and now we're ready to pull the trigger on meeting with the workshop as well as the establishing the workshop to meet with the service providers, and then the next day hold the public hearing event. But again, this is kind of contingent on the collaboration we would like to establish between the Resources and Development Committee, because if we're going to be modifying the regulations, we would like to include RDC on this. That way they have a better understanding of what we're trying to achieve with the regulations and modernizing it. So that's one thing I know that's land department has been challenged with, is just basically it's contingent on the regulations right now. I hope that provides more information. Again, this is something we have been working on. Logistically, it's been a challenge just because of how limited our resources are within NNTRC. I hope that kind of provides some information and background right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vicente, for that. Mr. Halona, are you on the call, sir? Mr. Tahi, do you see Mr. Halona on the call?
Chair, I don't see Mr. Halona on the call, but I'll reach out to him right now and let him know that his presence is being requested.
Okay.
Hello, Mr. Chair. This is Stephen from General Land Development Department.
Good morning there, Mr. Chischili. Go ahead.
Good morning. I can weigh in on this issue a little bit if need be to address some of Mr. Honorable Kealan Begay's comments.
Okay, Mr. Chischili, if you would, we would appreciate it. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, everybody on the call and honorable members of RDC. Last Thursday, the General Land Development Department received 6 telecommunication tower co-location lease applications from Smith Bagley DBA Cellular One. These were cited as FirstNet projects, and this is the first of us getting FirstNet-related projects. Of these projects, they are the Navajo Nation Tribal Park Headquarter Tract, so be at the actual Window Rock, the Navajo Nation Fairgrounds, Navajo Nation Tribal Park, the Water Tower in Toye, Diné College, Shiprock, and Tuba City High School. Of these sites, they are citing to apply for co-location sites. Of these sites, there is no principal telecommunication tower lease that is being cited for that area. They are not under Navajo Nation leases. They are under permits or subleases issued by entities that don't have the ability to convey land through resolution or authority of the Resources Committee, Advisory Committee, any of the subcommittees, or Navajo Nation Council. Our partner, Vertical Bridge, has reached out to Cellular One to request that they come under Navajo Nation leases. The term is called repapering, in order to legally come under the Navajo Nation's authority for these co-location sites. The repapering of these sites for FirstNet is needed first before co-locations can be processed. Hope that helped clear up a little bit of questions. Back to you, Chair.
Mr. Chischili, when you stated there on these 6 locations and repapering, what do you mean by repapering?
By repapering, I mean coming under the standard Navajo Nation telecommunication tower leases that all telecommunication towers are needed to come under before they can have co-locations attached to their tower. That is the process for telecommunication tower to, I guess, quote unquote, sublease to another entity, which would be the process underway right now that's in question. I believe we have our partners Vertical Bridge on the line as well, so they could probably elaborate a little bit more or a little bit better than I can. But essentially, it is a lease. That'd be the telecommunication tower lease. And from that lease, that principal lease, there can be an associated co-location lease as well. But in order for the co-location to be legally sufficient, the principal telecommunication tower needs to have a Navajo Nation lease, one that has been vetted by the Navajo Nation Department of Justice. Most of the sites are under permits issued by the parks, Navajo Nation parks, or Navajo Nation shopping centers, or high schools. And if you were to pull up their leases, business site leases, or any of their plan of operations, you would not find any provisions included that would allow them to sublease or sublet or co-locate or convey that type of land or that kind of ability to the original telecommunication tower in question.
Thank you, Mr. Chischili. Vertical Bridge, are you on the call?
Yes, sir. This is Kayla Kramer with Vertical Bridge. Can you hear me?
Yes, Ms. Kramer. Could you elaborate on this, what the work is being done by Vertical Bridge and how this repapering will be going through the process?
Okay, yes, sir. Basically, for a telecommunications lease to be legal with the United States government, they have to, in order to have AT&T antennas or any other carrier antennas, they have to pass through a certain level of federal requirements. Some of those requirements are NEPA, which is what you guys would translate as your fish and wildlife and your historical preservation, NEPA and SHPO. SHPO translates to your Tribal Historic Preservation Officer. Those are requirements that every single tower has to go through in the entire United States, not just on Navajo land. And when some of these carriers, namely Cell One, went through and built their towers a few years ago, they circumvented the Navajo Nation process. In addition to circumventing the federal process, they did not get NEPA or SHPO compliance. So these towers are not actually, in my understanding, legal to begin with because they don't have NEPA or SHPO clearance. We requested that Cell One come back through and get the proper Navajo Nation lease, as Mr. Shishili described, that's in compliance with the land department, but also in compliance with the federal NEPA and SHPO requirements and Navajo Nation requirements that BRCF and CRCF. And the 6 submittals that were received last Thursday are only for co-locations on towers that are not legal to begin with. So we're still trying to get everything to be brought into compliance with Navajo Nation law and also federal law. Does this make sense at all, or would you like to visit about this a little bit more?
Thank you, Ms. Kramer, for that. I understand. Well, now we're beginning to understand now why there's this obstacle. So what Vertical Bridge has discovered is that in order to have a telecommunications lease with the Navajo Nation, does that mean the Navajo Nation is under the federal government to also comply with the federal requirements as far as NEPA? Because that's what's required in the entire United States. And you stated that this company, Cell One, circumvented the laws and are not legal for SHPO clearance on the 6 or how many other locations they have. Is that what you're telling us? And the 6 that have been submitted are not legal and they need to come into compliance? Ms. Kramer?
Sir, it is my understanding that they have gone through your Fish and Wildlife and your Historical Preservation Department over the past few months, and that is the BRCF, which is your compliance form, and your CRCF. The 2 compliance forms for these 2 departments have been submitted with the packages, and they will be in compliance with that portion, but they are not requesting these forms to be on Navajo Nation leases. They want to keep them on their existing permits, which were expired in many cases. So they are coming into compliance with the federal requirements, and the Navajo Nation also mirrored what the federal requirements were when you put your processes together for these telecom leases, if they're followed, but the processes have not been followed in many cases, and these are 6 of them right here.
Ms. Khan, I do have a question for you. What we're discussing here, is it sensitive and confidential as far as circumventing laws and compliance issues that we just heard?
Mr. Chair, at this point, I see this as a report and that the Land Department and Vertical Bridge are giving this report. It seems I have heard a version of this a while back, but I would request that the Department of Justice be invited to get on the call, and with the understanding, I don't know the background of if there are any legal filings with regard to what is being presented. And if there are legal filings, then there would be a need to get into a different setting. But without that information about whether there is any action, legal action that has been started by either the Navajo Nation Department of Justice or the federal government. I do not have that information. If there is some sort of legal filings that would address the need to comply with federal and Navajo Nation law, then there might be an issue of going into executive session. However, we do not have Department of Justice on the line. I would request, Rodney, please, I would request that Rodney make that communication with Madam AG, and she would know who is working with this issue. Perhaps that is a very good suggestion for bringing to our attention, Mr. Chair, that this might be a sensitive issue with regard, in my looking at this with regard to any legal action that might be currently underway. I do not have that information. Mr. Chair, I would suggest again reaching out to Madam AG. Thank you for the question.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kahn, for your advisement. There was a question by Honorable Kealan Begay, and our discussion is really focused on how do we implement FirstNet? That is the goal. How do we get it done on the Navajo Nation? We have all these obstacles that we're coming across now, and Mr. Vicente said that himself, Honorable Begay, and Mr. Gilbert met on this matter in Phoenix in June of 2020, and to have this discussion, to have these implemented, and to also discuss the memorandum of agreement in specific areas for build-outs. And Mr. Chischilage here let us know that there were 6 documents, leases, that they received last week. And with the help of Vertical Bridge, they're trying to help assist AT&T as well as ComNet, Cellular One, to come into compliance. And Ms. Kramer from Vertical Bridge just pretty much expounded on how these telecommunication leases with the U.S. government as well as the Navajo Nation there are requirements, and there has to be some clearances involved and compliances in order for this to go forward. And this is where we're at. We just want this to go forward, and we would like to assist as leadership in some way to move this forward. Whatever needs to be corrected, whatever AT&T or ComNet or NTOA or Cellular One needs to comply with, that needs to be done, is what I am hearing, Ms. Khan. So I would appreciate Mr. Tahi, if you would contact Department of Justice, and perhaps they need to be on the call to address some of these issues as well. So thank you for that. And I will go back to Honorable Kealan Begay. Honorable Begay?
Chairman, maybe my other question is, so we're putting everything on the table, and we apologize AT&T for our internal issue, but who actually developed the MOU? I'd like to ask maybe both Cell One and Mr. Vicente or Land Department, who knows of who developed this MOU that's being circulated now. That's one.
Yeah, Mr.
No, I haven't finished yet. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Sorry about that.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah. The other one, Chairman. The second question, Nikki, is that NABI AU 2521 reaffirmed from the during the 23rd Council, 24th Council. You know what we voted on, and in that particular document, it asked to develop an ad hoc formulate earlier. Now, I believe several of our IT from each of the branch, judicial, executive, and legislative branch, working with each of their IT and how to move forward in this particular area. What they faced was, again, certain programs starting their own input from, such as Vertical Bridge and others. And I believe if this particular ad hoc could have been still in place, I believe they would have solved a lot of these problems. And sin. That's my thinking. But what has Vertical Bridge done to say that being an outside and really pushing federal policies on a sovereign government to say that this has to be done? Then we talked with the BIA director last week in informing us that there's a lot of these process, and even at the Congress level, that there's a lot of these right-of-way process lies with the tribal government. Washington, when are we going to stand up and say that we are the governing body of the Navajo Nation, and this is what, I'm not saying just do whatever we want, but all I'm saying is that when and how we continue to say that these are the federal policies, and this is the federal government policy, but yet we have numerous implications on the Navajo Nation that nothing is being done, but yet we have a lot of issues swirls around on the Navajo Nation dealing with public safety. I mean, when can we wake up and say that, okay, this is how we need to resolve it, rather than just saying and standing to say that we got to do this, you have to do this. Why isn't our own Navajo Nation program say this? I mean, does it really take to pay someone to tell us what needs to be done? And I think that's where we're at right now. Our program, I thought that's what they were developed for. Provide guidance and administer these process rather than paying so much funding to different programs off of the reservation. So Fish and Wildlife, maybe put them on the line and ask them that. And I know the short staff as well. And again, Mr. Vicente, I hate to continue to bring your name up, but you are the Regulatory Commissioner, Director. But again, there's another executive order that's in place also. Maybe that's even not. Chairman, what was given? Could I get a document from Vertical Bridge or the Land Department of what was sent to carriers that are doing business on the Navajo Nations that, I mean, they need to comply with this? When was it done? I mean, when was it issued? And if it was over 2 years or 3 years, then my next question is that why aren't the carriers complying with these particular requests by the Navajo Nation? Maybe get that resolved and get. I mean, if this is the case, I mean, what justification do we have in asking for so much more $1 million to expand cell service on the Navajo Nation? Now that points to my next question. So the chapters needs to go through this particular process. that each of the chapters will be considered to get some form of an E-rate process to get funding to get these services. Does now the chapter has to comply with all the fish and wildlife and NEPA issues again at all 110 chapters. And maybe this is the reason why we've been asking the programs to do an assessment, to do an overall review. And now that you find the findings, I mean, what progress and what effort has been made to resolve it and move forward and get things done? It seems like we just come together, we bring up issues, we adjourn, and we don't bother until we come back to a meeting like this again, and then we say that this is the situation. Then, what on he called chairman, Hashit Adole. Dit sahnetli ko unda di nahot di ko nahot dit atos ilna that oha nigo ko that dost I see dit on phone that san dit hot dit ego ko to the nebich hoto nida to that se hot ata inishta jinzo dan it's a case. So Chairman, I'm not siding with anybody, but I'm siding with the Navajo people and making sure that they get the service that they deserve. And what's being implemented off the reservation should be more appropriate to have it on the Navajo Nation, especially our first responders. So we kept texting each other or saying that my phone dropped or I have no internet service. No, that should give us the idea of what our public safety or first responder goes through when there is a situation out there. That should really just give us to say, okay, we even just during the meeting we have this problem. Now, comparing, I'm putting that onto our first responder. In certain areas that there's no service. So it frustrates me, Chairman. I don't know if I need to apologize, but this is the thing that we continue to do. So maybe go back the past 3 years since we've started this, what actually had been done. And maybe even call the carriers and tell them, hey, you got to do this. Just comply with it. Since you're asking fundings from the Navajo Nation, since you're asking fundings on behalf of the Navajo Nation, all of those are public funding. So just abide by our policy and what's in place. So I'd like to ask for those documents from the Land Department or whoever is indicating that these are the area that needs to be complied with. And I do like to ask the Department of Justice to say that, where and how is this particular program is really pushing a lot of these requirements of the federal government onto the Navajo Nation. I believe that our Department of Justice really needs to stand alongside to say that, is it necessary? For the benefit of our Navajo people. We're not talking about, less than, 20 or 30 feet of land that we're talking about, and majority of it is up in the air. Chairman, again, I apologize, but we got to get this resolved today, Chairman.
Thank you, Honorable Begay, for that.
Mr. Chair, if I could.
Question.
This is Stephen.
Stephen? Yes, and also, Stephen, when you respond, also let us know if, is this the first time that you received these 6 applications from the service provider? Has anything been submitted to your office for about 1.5 to 2 years? You may respond, Mr. Chischili.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Honorable Key Allen Begay, everybody on the line. To Mr. Begay's comments regarding NEPA requirements, I apologize if something got misconstrued. I believe what Ms. Kramer was trying to elaborate on was that if once the telecommunication towers that are trying to be co-located on, once they are repapered and come on a Navajo Nation telecommunication tower lease, they are in effect becoming in compliance with federal environmental law as well as Navajo Nation environmental law, therefore allowing off Navajo compliance measures to be taken up. There's no need for any other federal environmental laws to be taken up in order to. I do not believe they are imposing on Navajo Nation sovereignty or the ability to review for environmental compliance. They are running in parallel when they get under a Navajo Nation telecommunication tower lease. And to your question, Mr. Chair, these are the 6 projects that have specifically outlined that they are for the FirstNet rollout. We do have some other telecommunication tower leases that are going through the Navajo Nation 164, but they are not identified as FirstNet projects. I just wanted to clarify that in the comments requested or stated by Honorable Gay, and that's back to you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chichillis. Department of Justice, Ms. Blackhat, are you on the call?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, Ms. Blackhat. Do you know who drafted the Memorandum of Agreement or Memorandum of Understanding for the telecommunications towers leases?
My understanding is that the MOAs were drafted by GLAD. I could be wrong. I know we were given the MOA to review. I'm not really sure who exactly drafted it, but my understanding was that it was done in consultation with GLAD, and I believe maybe Land Department. I'm not sure. But just to kind of add to some of the comments that were provided and then some of the questions or statements made, if you recall, all of this was presented in August during the last leadership meeting regarding this issue. And I believe at that time we had gone extensively into the MOA. And the MOA contained terms that the companies are required to comply with. And one of the requirements is that, that they have to provide copies of any signed leases or any other ground rights for the towers identified in the Exhibit A, and then any approvals for deployment for any equipment or modifications are subject to written confirmation by Land. So that was part of it, and then also the parties are supposed to provide any permits or leases they may have, and as was stated by Vertical Bridge and GLAD, some of these sites did not have existing permits or leases, or they had expired, which is why they're requiring a new lease for the sites to bring them into compliance. And then the MOA also identified terms and conditions that the companies agreed to comply with, which were some of the areas identified by Ms. Kramer with respect to complying with tribal, state, and federal laws regarding siting and operations of these tower sites. That is all I have for now. I don't know if Mr. Chichilli can provide additional information in terms of who created this MOA. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Blackhat, for letting us know that. Mr. Chichilli, do you know who drafted the MOA?
Hello, thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe it was a collaboration between NNTRC, the Land Department, and I believe that was the extent of it. In the MOA, it does mention that the telecommunication tower leases will be processed through the General Land Development Department. Once received, there will be 48 hours of receipt in order to approve or disapprove of the applications. But I think that's the extent of my knowledge. That is the extent of my knowledge. Sorry, back to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chilich. And Mr. Halona? Mr. Halona, are you on the call?
Good morning, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Mr. Halona, thank you for getting on the call. We're having a discussion on the FirstNet implementation, the laws that were passed previously by Council was CMA-12-20 to deploy FirstNet on the Navajo Nation, and also NABIMY-26-19, which was passed by the previous council. So our discussion this morning is that we need to implement this and move forward so Navajo Nation can have its FirstNet in operation for our first responders. And it was reported to us that some of these carriers have not come into compliance, and we would like to assist any company that has not come into compliance and what they need to do to move forward and what needs to get done. Mr. Halona.
Chairman Nez and members of the Resource Development Committee and all of those that are on the call. I apologize. I was meeting with NTU on similar tower situations that they had set up previously. I guess I've been on this for a little while on the discussion as the MOU development. When the legislation was passed for emergency built-out, that was kind of contrary to what the regulations are for telecom leases, we said we could move forward and help and assist by able to do an MOU. And so Cell 1 developed the MOU, the draft MOU, and they sent it over to us, and then we started going through it and adjusting it to fit in to the current laws and regulations. And so that was the MOU. Since then, we also entered into an agreement, similar agreement with ComNet that also had some built-out situations that they wanted to deal with. So we entered into an MOU with them, and I believe they have completed into coming into compliance with their towers. And so that's what the MOU said, was that they would move forward, and then all the areas that were identified to be FirstNet to deploy and to be on, the towers had to have current valid telecom leases. There's a number of them that did not have leases, so the carriers were told that you need to get that into compliance as fast as possible, and then FirstNet would be able to co-locate on those towers because there's an underlying valid lease available. So since then, I know it's gone back and forth, and working with DOJ, Land Department, General Land Development, our experts, Vertical Bridge, the formulation of the MOU was completed.
We went through it with the carriers and all agreed to the final last ones, and then they were all signed and executed, and it went back to the carriers. They agreed to it. They signed it. President signed those MOUs. That's what happened. So we're up to this point. Some of those towers that were identified had never had leases from the Navajo Nation. They have gone to other businesses, they've gone to other entities and put those towers on those sites. And Navajo Nation, so all we've asked of them all this time has been to bring those towers into compliance, so FirstNet won't have a challenge getting the co-locations on those towers, and then they can build out. We've been working and been communicating with FirstNet since 2016, advising them what the process is on Navajo, how towers are built on Navajo, how you can provide services, telecom services on Navajo, how to get on somebody else's tower. The last time was in Phoenix. They've had this, they wanted the deadline right away within the next 6 months. We haven't received anything, especially from, like I said, ComNet has completed theirs. Cell one, could you eat after a later cut in the niche? A quite yati, Victina, quite none, not at you, not a no. On so case, only cut in the that's a benina, 18 on hot wave, and not say that's a niho, that's a ben yet, benina, quite the nest. I see the nest, Yigina Yitla. I thought that I thought that would be the car hit out me. Did in Lago, did cheese in that up with it. No, but what is ya? I call in the out at a Sahoy, you have to see Name that Lahonda is CH that say to take up that nest. I call fix the leases. Quite what aid. Quite a seatla, a short say. I don't show Sago in the time, not only to the me. A call, I did a call, I think upon not a late out the hotel, thought that she had. Joe and Chito all what I need some late out, Ayla. I said that to was and one side, the queen was in the home and so it got a later. I call a quaggy what paid that was maybe they need to hire a consultant firm that can help them do all the paperwork and do all the requirements to submit it. It will not still that's a pay not the skin or at least what I thought. So to need a quite. That's what I saw Sago in the it on the other way first that can get on those towers as they have been informed from the co-location side. Go that a call quite none. A call what I can't know.
Thank you very much, Mr. Halona. Honorable members of RDC, any other comments or questions?
Chairman.
Yes.
Chairman, Delegate Freeland.
Freeland, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, colleagues and staff and everyone on the call, presenters as well. I guess this is a good example of why we need more oversight on, everything as a whole, whether it's telecommunications or just communications. We need a regulatory authority for the nation, establish something like the states have. And that way they can regulate a lot of these towers or regulate which companies are coming and going. I know there's a big mystery for a lot of these towers, but at some point we gotta start thinking about a regulatory authority like a Navajo Public Regulation Commission or something. That way, we can ensure that a lot of these regulations are established and enforced. Just my thoughts, Chairman, this morning at AI and listening to the conversation. I guess I do have a question related to revenue and the potential of revenue, and like all of us, our colleagues, we're always going to be thinking about new sources of revenue for the nation, especially for the general fund. Would a FirstNet or would a MOU, MOA, would that be a potential source of revenue for the nation? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Freeland. Mr. Halona, perhaps you could answer that question, sir, those questions.
Chairman, Delegate Freeland, I didn't see Johnson with a regulatory office. According to that, Tosigo, a shade Yago. Inventory Yago, hey, that bito, hey, Icado, peso, yete. So, depending na, inventory, don't assessment, they need Kado, at Banalte. So, currently, that's what I think we need to look at is that function. PRC function that Delegate Freeland is speaking to. Telecom, utilities, something to make sure everybody's in compliance, make sure everybody's protected, make sure everybody's getting the services that they're paying for, and good quality service is needed. Currently, with all of our the services that are on Navajo, a lot of them are generating revenue without paying the landowner, which is the people. The people are the ones that are getting taken advantage of because there's a lot of companies that are operating without proper authority, without proper approval, without paying the rates that have been put in place since 2005 by RDC. This is how it's going to be. Instead, they find ways to go around it. I'm going to put it on the tower over there on BIA tower inside the school track so I don't have to do it. I'm going to put it next to a water tower that's withdrawn for a water tower. I'm going to put it over here at the fairgrounds because it's under parks and recreation. I don't have to go get Ato that in kada jo nashe to leki atati ne akodi peso ki e la atayi la akwish ana hatazid the nenda e ledo the nenda e la edo hata e peso e ache pe eti kwa kaya pekai the Nebuchadnezzar because she did that. Nana, Ado ye last company na peso to be either. All our people are not getting the benefits, are not getting the return. The chapters are not getting some additional revenue. General funds is not getting the revenue. And when you're looking at the numbers, there's one almost 20 million. There's others. So once they come into compliance, once we get all the documents straight and we know where every tower is, who's on it, who else did they put on it, then we'll know it's not going to go away. There's additional built out. Go there. So I said it's no secret what the regulations are. It's on our websites, what the lease looks like. Towers kabahnaon and le hagola tato sila legola tahaten with all was out and then had answers. Ado le hanza was na ilgo unta ado unta now just netle jo what the kadi spata house and all that what the house that quality but your phone did it today meeting got by ne was all was a ha I just ado thing ado nana you got to call in again. We know where these dead spots are. We should focus at that thought. Need FirstNet. They want to develop towers in non-service areas. That they were going to serve underserved areas where there is no service. Service the hello kalakonde yatansen. So I check at the store. Begin that no sao and that you have access. Every police officer, every first responder, everybody's gonna have to buy the service to use FirstNet. So it's still a commercial operation, it's still a commercial aspect. The built out is where the grant money came to build out. Auto, it's built. To access it, there's a fee you have to. Everybody has to pay. That's it. They'll carry 3 cell phones. They're private. Their Navajo cell phone and the first responder cell phone. That's it.
Mr. Halona.
What that? Of course, yeah.
Mr. Halona. Honorable Freeland, so let me go back to Honorable Freeland for his follow-up question and just respond to the question at hand. Thank you. Honorable Freeland.
Chairman, thank you. Mr. Halona, thank you. I guess my question really pertains to the companies at hand that we have. Are they abiding by state PRC regulations or state commission regulations? Is there a conflict with that? Would that be a conflict with state versus Navajo Nation jurisdiction? Kind of get into legalities of that, but are these companies following state guidelines or state regulations? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Freeland. Mr. Halona.
Thank you, Chairman Nez. Yeah, Delegate Freeland, not interested. DOJ could probably provide more information, but what I'll say is that on trust lands, then the state wouldn't be regulating on trust lands, and I don't know if they still have to comply with the state regulatory office. DOJ can probably answer that. On fee lands, then yes, they would have to comply with the state and county laws on our fee lands because we're the private owner of the fee lands, but they're subject to those regulations. So perhaps Ms. Black Hat could elaborate further if you have.
Thank you, Mr. Halona. Ms. Black Hat, could you respond to that question, please?
Mr. Halona's interpretation is correct. If it is on trust land, then they would have to comply with that.
Ms. Black Hat? Ms. Black Hat, we could barely hear you.
Is that better? Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Okay. I was just saying that Mr. Halona's interpretation is correct. If we're dealing with trust lands, then Navajo Nation laws would apply. And if it is on fee land, then, they would have to comply with state requirements.
Okay, thank you. Honorable Freeland, do you have a follow-up?
Chairman, no. I guess my concern is a lot of jurisdictional issues and how do we enforce these, especially if they're on trust side. And just like the example that Mike gave. But we can talk about it further at some other point. But I know we're talking about FirstNet, and just wanted to bring this up as well. But thank you, Eddie, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to add also what I'm understanding today, as well as our previous meetings, is the issue. The issue really is compliance issues. That is what we're hearing today. This is where the obstacle is at that we have identified, that we're informed due to the compliance issues. Companies are not willing to comply with the current Navajo Nation laws to have valid leases to do business, whether it's co-location or establishing a new cell tower. And some towers have existed, but they have existed without any lease, my understanding. So what they're being told by the company that is contracted Vertical Bridge is that they need to come into compliance. And in order for them to come into compliance also, they have to pay the rates, they have to back pay. And this is what I'm hearing. And I believe that every company that wishes to do business on the Navajo Nation, whether it's telecommunications, they need to comply. They need to comply with Navajo Nation laws in order for, like today, in order for FirstNet to be accomplished, whoever has the contract, which would be ComNet as well as Cellular One, they just need to follow the law, what it says, what they need to do, and agree that they will do business on the Navajo Nation, that they will comply with the leases and pay the rates that are in place, because these laws are in place, to my understanding. So, so it is what about this decision, and Honorable Kealan Begay, you have the floor.
Chairman, again, it is very interesting that we don't even know who really authored the MOU. I mean, maybe that's the reason why we're not knowing what we're doing. I mean, it's troublesome. Mr. Halona, can you just provide us, RDC Chairman, Chairman Nez, could we get a statement that were sent to each of the carrier of this particular situation that they have to comply? Could I get a document from the land department that each of the carrier were informed to address the issue at hand. Now, maybe again, this goes to us, Chairman. Maybe there should be a policy, not only that will be changed by an oversight committee, because I think that's where prior actions is kind of like somewhat. We always, each council, each we inherit prior council's action, and that may have been the case. But how do we resolve to where it doesn't happen again? I think that's one thing that we really need to look at, just to where that this particular process would only be approved by the full council, not just only the oversight committee. But but I mean, we changed certain policy while we were here. Should there be a different group in the next term or the following term? I mean, that's where the lobbying dues come in for people, for companies to say things to be done in their way. I mean, maybe that could have happened. I don't know. But all I'm saying is that let's make a change of these policy that is really hard to be changed. But what Mr. Halona, let's put that in place. That's it. No matter what, this is what you got to follow. And then the other question probably will be to the carriers. I mean, I'd like to get a report from them. And I'd like to get a report from Cellular One, and I'd like to get a report from NTUA, how they're complying with a lot of these things and what are they doing. I mean, the discussion, I mean, now turn back into funding. But yet the shinit that's understandable. And I've made a comment last week to the president of the Navajo Nation. I'm moving to have Mr. Halona. I sure like for the chapters to retain a lot of these fees at the chapter level. I mean, that's what is being alluded to. I mean, that's something that, let our chapter benefit from these funding that the carrier pays to the nation. But I didn't get not much of response on that by the president. But I think that's what we really need to do, especially the certified chapters. To let those chapters retain these funding when it comes to then. What's the purpose of having our chapter being certified? I mean, why do they have to go get some direction from the central government? And I believe that each of the chapters shouldn't be able to have problem establishing cell tower. I think that's another thing we need to look into, Chairman, that each of these certified chapters should be able and capable of making agreement with these cell carriers. I mean, although what about the township? a coco a baby nasikoto baby can dot asho at kototi it or lit ado yego in on lit naskote jijo base pass anich na ho ka program ich na ho kata baby tika be has anigate a yego the ne hit the and liniki baby is town hot out in nisto lit. And I also sent an email, Kadosh and Chairman, and you've noticed, and I've been sending you emails as well of what I've been sending to Department of Justice and the Office of Legislative Counsel. Again, back in July, Kadosh brother Yahadzi, could we establish commissions or some type of a regulatory that's being regulated by our Navajo general people? The Shno Bahasil, as of today, I haven't get a response yet. Then I've also sent another request to Office of Legislative Counsel regarding co-location and roaming agreement. And companies, they're not helping each other. Because I have AT&T, Kerry Johnson. I don't need to make this an issue, but I have an AT&T phone. But in certain areas, I mean, it just drops. There's 2 towers in Burnside. You see two towers, but yet AT&T doesn't work well right there. I don't live from Ganado to Winter Rock through the summit You see towers there, but AT&T doesn't work well. So I believe vice versa, into A's, and then maybe some have Verizon and T-Mobile and Cell One. Our Navajo people shouldn't even have a problem. As long as they have a cell phone, it should be working well on the Navajo Nation. And that's another area that that I'm dealing with. That how do we force? Now, I say that I guess with a direct statement to say that we force them to say that if you want public funding, federal funding, and do business on Navajo, I mean you got to have co-locations and do roaming agreement as quickly as possible. Maybe that would resolve a lot of these things. And then maybe a question to AT&T. I mean, from your end. I mean, maybe in some areas, what are the actual requirements that you see as being the contract that was given to you to do the first net? I mean, what are some areas that you are being, mandated to do in working with tribes? I mean, maybe that should clear some up as what we're talking about. AT&T, these are the mandate that these are required that you have to do. I mean, maybe get some clarification from you, because I understand about the NEPA and the wildlife and what's required for each tower. But does your program, the FirstNet, really does need to have that in place with these towers? Because you're not disturbing any more land. All you're doing is putting maybe an equipment on the tower. So if that tower is not complying, then maybe you need to ask the question to Cellular One, and why was this MOU developed, knowing that this was the situation? But I believe that the land department knows about it, who actually authored this. I mean, but it's not being disclosed. So we know that there's a fault in there, but yet we can't agree to it or accept that. But I know that who actually authored the president of the Navajo Nation, his signature is on there. What's the purpose of having a DOJ in this review process, and they don't know who this particular document came from? And we're always being told as legislatures, being told to get to a lot of information about co-location and roaming agreement. deal sa ajbel ta hol na to adan al sosen chhot de le kon da in be has on ki ko na hada to ne to shit ne ka da kon za ta hol jish koko what's being brought to me will those be legitimate document to develop these legislation adan such case or not the chairman I don't know. I mean we're kind of like in a situation where each department doesn't even know what they're doing, but yet we're just pushing and pressing certain policy. So I'd like to see those documents to come back to me, and I maybe request for another internal meeting follow-up. Maybe this time, maybe get a bigger location where everyone's in the room, bring all the documents, and then do a presentation to say that these are the areas that we're dealing with, and this is what we're doing. And I'd like to have a meeting with all the carriers. Chairman, that's another request. I think I'm saying this a second time. I mean, all the carriers that are doing business on the Navajo Nation, and those potentially wants to do business on the Navajo Nation. I believe that one company is saying that we don't want no money, but we just want to do and help establish equipments or infrastructures on Navajo. We want to hear to help. No. Beso yo kedo, but yet I guess we really need to the regulatory commissions, the compliance, but I believe and I would guarantee that we just say that, but we really aren't pushing it. And I always say that is what's the purpose of having a judicial branch? I mean, why can't the court mandate to say that these are the areas that you really need to comply with? I think we need to start utilizing our judicial branch. Let them interpret and let them determine if what we're saying is true. Then let the court determine. And I think we need to go in that direction as well. Out of DOJ, the IC really needs to step up to really help us in resolving this particular situation. Chairman, I don't know, 4 or 5.
Thank you, Honorable Begay. At the beginning, we were informed that Cellular One was the one that developed the MOU, and it was vetted with the current Navajo Nation laws, and then ComNet was the only one that completed their compliance with their cell towers. So it is let me go back to Ms. Johnson. Carrie?
Yes, thank you. So as far as our own requirements, so we do take compliance very, very seriously at AT&T as a company, but then also as part of our obligation to the FirstNet Authority in building out their Band 14 FirstNet spectrum. So that's definitely, an area of critical importance for us. Regarding the MOA, I did share that with Mr. Tahi to share with the RDC members. So I did send a copy of that. And with those 9 sites that were referenced, so that is just a small portion of the overarching build that we have within Navajo Nation. I would say that as far as specifics on those sites, it would be helpful to have SBI doing business as Cellular One be part of future conversations. I did confirm with them during this meeting that they are under the impression that those sites do have the NEPA compliance. And so that's something, if there were questions about those 9 sites, hopefully we could get those to Mr. Halona and the legal advisors. With the MOA, again, there's the issue where those 9 sites had entered into lease agreements with specific landlords, such as schools or shopping centers. One desire by SBI is to use the MOA to enable the FirstNet build out to proceed for those 9 sites, so that we, can immediately start on those projects while they simultaneously work out kind of what to do with transitioning from the original leases with those individual landlords into the broader Navajo Nation compliance. So that would be one request for consideration and maybe an opportunity for us as AT&T, SBI, Mr. Halona, Ms. Black Hat, if we could all sit down and Mr. Vicente and talk about, is there a path forward? And then there's also, I know that SBI has been working on language for subleases. So there's a number of the existing Navajo Nation leases that they have, but if AT&T is going to add our Band 14 FirstNet Authority equipment as well as our AT&T commercial equipment, we do need to have a sublease. So my understanding is as early as today, definitely this week, they are planning to submit, and I believe the number is about 37 sites to the land department, and that's going to be a sublease. And so in order to support our FirstNet build out, we would greatly appreciate, fast and expedient review and approval of those subleases for those 37 sites so that they can immediately proceed. And then while SBI works with Navajo Nation on the leasing issue, transitioning from those localized leases to the broader approach for leasing that Navajo Nation has, we would request the ability to at least consider the opportunity to use that MOA so those 9 sites can move forward for the FirstNet build so that we are not delayed by this process while the different parties work to get the leasing migrated to the standard approach. So that is kind of where we are with the SBI sites, kind of our two kind of big issues, the MOA for those 9 locations, and then requesting fast and expedient review and approval for those 37 subleases. So we really, thank you for your interest and guidance. And I will, after this meeting, ask that hopefully SBI can share some additional guidance about the environmental review that those 9 sites had gone through.
Ms. Johnson, what is FDI?
Sorry, SBI, so the cellular one. So the Smith-Bagley Incorporated, and I think they do business as Cellular One. And one other thing I would note is that, with the sublease, there was discussion about, revenue opportunity and things like that. And we have negotiated specifically within those subleases that AT&T will be paying for that co-location on those sites. There will be an annual rent paid to the Navajo Nation. And so as soon as we, get those 37 subleases executed, there would be that, payment being made by AT&T to the Navajo Nation. So there is certainly, an additional benefit to getting, those subleases executed as quickly as possible. Any further questions for me?
Honorable Begay, has your questions been answered? Honorable Begay.
Chairman, I appreciate the response. I guess, again, going back internally, Chairman, I know a lot of these has to be administratively, and I don't want to be in the position to start directing or telling the programs to do this. But they have to help us in resolving these situations. And again, I'd like to see those documents and maybe addressing this. Bring everyone into one room and let's get it resolved. Get it resolved there, or invite them to come on to the show. I don't know if we have all day to discuss this. Maybe inform the carriers, because they're the one that's going to be implementing the first net. But yet we have allowed other companies to go across the Navajo Nation for the same purpose, but yet other companies or other communities or cities are benefiting from it. Maybe do another task, another meeting to resolve this by the end of the week. Usually at the end of the month, usually we really don't have no major meetings that happens. Or maybe Thursday, Wednesday, the early morning, the meeting not in the afternoon. Don't up in it's not in that it's not nonsense. So I think we really need to resolve this situation, Chairman. That companies are willing to help, but it's the internal that we're really having an issue with. And again, I mean, what force can we do to really have these companies, whoever they are, running the cell services? I mean, they need to address and adhere to our policy. We need to force them to get these done. I mean, how long will that take? So, I mean, the council passed a legislation. It's not being abided by. The Nabi Council passed a resolution. It's not being abided by. And then there's an MOU that was signed by the president, and it's not even being abided by. I mean, what more can we do then? And now we're kind of being told that this is what the federal policy says. Comply with that. Or non hit that. No cut or cut or not all kit. Companies on Liniki programs on Liniki they're there to resolve a lot of these issues. But yet, I guess the situation at hand says otherwise. And as a policymaker, I mean, maybe we need to change the plan of operation. That's it. And you just saw an email from our legislative council that implementing a regulatory commission to regulatory for the whole Navajo Nation is a big task and can't be done. I'm sure it's not going to be done within a year or 2 years. So we got to deal with what we have right now. So I guess, Chairman, I know you'll provide a good guidance and recommendation on this particular issue. For the let the court make that determination. But with that if that's the case, what happens with all these funding allocation that we plan on setting aside for cell service? Other dik at opera funding. Then on that line is 110 chapter cell service. But the halno do di ni go go. Krisha ile Krisha. Why can't the Navajo Nation assume all these cell towers? Then we will comply with it. What that's it, yeah. But the complication does still lies in providing the service. So Akwaki Sissy Kesto Yashi Chairman. So then go dan dik at all these services being available at their internet but yet majority of our Navajo students are probably have that capability for sure. But not yun the Nasdaq then don't because they don't have access to the internet for those schools that are doing virtual learning. Other corner public safety and so I believe that I like that to be resolved today, Chairman. On behalf of our Navajo people. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Begay. I believe that what information that we receive, they're very important, which will guide us to making a decision today. And I'm glad that we have everybody from General Land Development Department, as well as Vertical Bridge and Navajo Land Department, and the Department of Justice here on the line with us. And what I'm hearing today is the issue is compliance. We have identified that the issue is compliance. Honorable Begay is saying, what do we need to do to resolve the situation with this regulatory compliance so this first net can move forward on the Navajo Nation? History tells us that the U.S. government had given the contract to AT&T. Ms. Johnson, your department there, I believe as far as compliance is concerned, AT&T needs to direct Cellular One, whoever is the subcontractor, perhaps ComNet as well, direct them to comply with Navajo Nation laws and make sure that these leases are updated, renewed, and make sure that they all are in compliance. That is what I am hearing today. There is no other way to go around Navajo Nation laws, and that's why we have attorneys from the Department of Justice. When these documents come into the departments of Land Department and General Land Department and Fish and Wildlife, and then to the Department of Justice, I understand that the Department of Justice will raise its red flag and say, okay, you did not do this. Go back and vet this properly, make some corrections, and then let's resubmit or move it forward. I don't believe that DOJ will allow Land Department or General Land Department or Fish and Wildlife or other departments to tell them to just go ahead and move it along. It is each department's responsibility to follow the policies that are in place. It's the only way I believe they can sign off on these documents to move them forward. And these programs have not received any documents, packets to request leases from Land Department or General Land Department until a week ago. So Ms. Johnson, from your shop, as the main contractor from the federal government, I believe that you probably need to direct the subcontractors to comply with Navajo Nation laws so this first net can be implemented. And that's what I'm hearing today, Ms. Johnson. We need your help.
Yes, absolutely. And one thing I guess I would look to Mr. Vicente and the land department. If one option could be maybe if we all sit down, AT&T, Mr. Vicente, Mr. Halona. Also, I think it would be helpful to have representatives from Cellular One, and we can talk through kind of what are the different things that need to happen. What is a path forward? We take compliance with Navajo Nation as well as with the broader NEPA requirements very, very seriously. So that is something that I'd recommend that we try to do as a next step. Mrs. Black Hat, I think, would also be very, very helpful as a representative for DOJ, just so that we're all in clear understanding of what the path forward is. How do we keep FirstNet on track, but with a real keen commitment to compliance? So that's a conversation that I will also, immediately today relay to both of our partners, Cellular One and ComNet, just the importance of compliance. But would really love if we could even, as early as this week, meet with the land department, DOJ, with Mr. Vicente, as well as Cellular One, and talk through, what are the next steps that are required, and how do we keep the FirstNet build on track, on time, while still having a keen eye and a commitment to that importance of compliance. So thank you, Chairman Nez.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson, for that. So Mr. Vicente, Mr. Halona, Mr. Chili, as well as Ms. Black Hat, if you would, please communicate with Ms. Johnson from AT&T and set up a meeting to talk over the differences or the requirements that need to be complied with for the next steps moving forward, because Ms. Johnson just mentioned to keep FirstNet on track. On track meaning let's keep this initiative going forward so we can accomplish this task on the Navajo Nation for FirstNet. So if you would schedule a meeting this week, make time, and including Cellular One and ComNet as Ms. Johnson requested, and perhaps y'all can have a respectful meeting and resolve some of these issues that need to be fixed. And then we're here as leadership. We're here. What needs to be done, if there's a policy change that needs to be done, if there's a new law that needs to be introduced, whatever needs to be done, we are here. We have attorneys that guide us as far as the legal aspects of this. And I believe that's what we have come to conclude today. Our recommendations, Honorable Begay requested a follow-up meeting as soon as possible. And perhaps after your meeting, we can put you back on the agenda for RDC and let us know what you all have agreed during your meeting to help resolve this situation. Ms. Johnson, you're good with that?
Yes, I think that sounds like a very good path forward, and I'm hopeful once we convene that working meeting at the department level that we will have some promising updates to report back to this esteemed body, and look forward to working with everyone to find a path forward, and again, keep FirstNet on track, because we certainly appreciate the criticality of getting this communications and this coverage out to serve Navajo Nation's public safety community.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Mr. Basenti, do you agree? Mr. Chris Basenti? Mr. Chischili?
Chair,
Hello,
sir.
hello, Chair. Yes, I agree. Sorry, I was muted.
Who is this?
This is Stephen Chichili from the General Land Development Department. I'm sorry, I was muted.
Go ahead, Mr. Chischili.
Oh, I just wanted to agree to the meeting and working together to get towers into compliance to keep FirstNet on track. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Mr. Halona?
Good afternoon, Yananate, Chairman Nez, Resource Development Committee, and all those that are on the call. We will most certainly assist again to continue improving services and equipment development on Navajo the best that we can with existing criteria that we have. The regulations would be very helpful to move things even more.
Thank you. Mr. Basenti?
Thank you, Chair. My apologies. I had to transfer to a regular telephone call, and I don't know how to star 6 myself, so my apologies. Yes, sir. I look forward to the meeting. With what Mr. Halona did mention with the regulations, we're wondering this is possible coordinations and collaboration that NNTRC could work with the RDC members on addressing the workshop with service providers on the regulations, and then move to the public hearing. And we're trying to aim and try and coordinate to see if it's possibly the future possible dates of October 25th and October 20th. The thing we're also trying to establish is the location, as well as how we would like to conduct these meetings in a safe manner, along with NDOH's guidelines per CD, and as well as CDC guidelines to keep everyone safe from COVID, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Basenti. Ms. Blackhat, would Department of Justice make time to assist at the meeting?
Yes, this is Veronica. I can make myself available for any meetings that are scheduled. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else need to be at the table during this time? Ms. Johnson?
Sorry, I was working to unmute myself. No, I think that covers it, really having Land Department, DOJ, Mr. Basenti's, and then, AT&T and Smith Bagley are doing business with Cellular One. They're probably the key parties that we will need to convene, and then we really, as AT&T and the private partner working to make FirstNet a reality, look forward to working with everyone to keep FirstNet on track. And we'll look forward to providing an update to this esteemed committee about the progress and the path forward that we identify.
Ms. Johnson, one other question. Vertical Bridge has done some inventory and assessments on the Navajo Nation. Would you like them to be on the call as well in the meeting?
Yeah, I don't think we'd have any issue having them, and probably just for continuity. That sounds like a good idea, but I would, defer to Mr. Halona and Mr. Basenti. But I would not have a problem with their involvement.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Kramer, are you still on the call? Ms. Kramer, press *6 to unmute.
Yes, sir. I am on the call now. Sorry, I had unmute problems. Yes, Vertical Bridge will be available to be at any meeting that you might request our presence.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. Honorable members of RDC, any other comments or questions? None. Ms. Johnson, do we still need to go into executive session?
I think we have really covered the breadth of issues that we were hoping to talk through, and just appreciate the RDC for directing all of us at a department level to talk about next steps. So I think that we've covered everything that I was really hoping to convey during this public meeting.
So we don't need to go into executive session, correct?
No, I don't think that's necessary.
Okay, thank you very much for your time today to come before the RDC leadership. And I believe we were very optimistic as to the outcome of what we will do moving forward, which is to have the entities involved to have a meeting this week and report back to Resources Development Committee. And as you stated, we will have promising updates, which we look forward to, Ms. Johnson, and all those that are involved in our discussion today. So that will be our recommendations and follow-up. Honorable members of RDC, do you have any other comments or questions? None? Okay. Just want to say thank you all very much. Most certainly appreciate your time, your recommendations, advisement. You all be safe. Take good care of yourself, and may God bless each and every one of you. We will go ahead and adjourn at this time. It is now 12:21. Thank you.